Welcome and thank you for being here. We are Jenny Lamb, Lindsay Milligan, Candace Morrow, Kai Rockwell, and Mary Sewell. Today, we'll examine education not just as a system, but as a fundamental human right. In the U.S., access to quality education is still shaped by race, income, geography, disability, and systemic inequalities. Grounded in social work values, we'll explore how these disparities persist, who they impact, and how we, as justice informed practitioners, can work to dismantle barriers and promote equitable solutions. Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. As doctoral level social workers, we see this both as a call to action and a reminder of education's power to challenge injustice. Today, we'll explore how access to quality education remains deeply unequal in the U.S. and why it's essential for social workers to advocate for education as a basic human right. Education is a basic human right as outlined in Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which guarantees free, compulsory primary education and equitable access to higher education. But in the US, education remains deeply unequal. Research highlights disparities in access and quality, especially for marginalized groups, including students of color, low income families, English language learners, and those with disabilities. These inequities reflect systemic barriers in policy and funding. It's our responsibility to confront these injustices through research, practice, and advocacy.
To understand education as a right, we have to look beyond academics. Education is a pathway to human flourishing, nurturing both cognitive and non cognitive growth. It includes emotional intelligence, social awareness, critical thinking, and civic participation, not just test scores. Upholding education as a right means free, compulsory primary education, equitable pathways to secondary and higher education, and safe, inclusive learning environments where all students can thrive. And now I'm up here. Globally, 258 million children and youth are out of school. Many face barriers like poverty, gender discrimination, conflict, and unsafe learning environments that prevent them from attending school. In the U.S., racial and income based achievement gaps remain significant. The school to prison pipeline disproportionately impacts Black and Brown youth, a clear example of systemic inequalities within educational institutions. These patterns reflect deep structural barriers that deny many students their right to quality education. Historical policies like school segregation, redlining, and discriminatory housing practices have created lasting educational inequalities. These systemic barriers mean that schools in low income and minority communities are often underfunded and lack experienced teachers and vital extracurricular activities.
Research shows education is linked to better health, income, and civic engagement. However, schools often reinforce social inequalities through tracking students, uneven resource distribution, biased discipline, and curricula that doesn't reflect diverse experiences. These practices maintain disparities based on race and socioeconomic status. Understanding this helps social workers push for more equitable educational systems. Policies like Title I funding and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act aim to reduce educational disparities. However, these efforts face challenges such as inconsistent funding and uneven enforcement. The school choice and charter school movements promote alternatives to traditional public schools, but often raise equity concerns, including draining resources from public schools, increasing segregation, and creating uneven educational quality. These mixed outcomes highlight the complexity of addressing educational inequities through policy. Despite well intentioned reforms, many initiatives fall short because they fail to fully address the complexities of equity in education. Many educational reforms lack cultural responsiveness, limiting their effectiveness in supporting marginalized communities and sometimes perpetuating inequities. Charter schools offer alternative options but often suffer from inconsistent oversight, which can increase segregation and deepen disparities. The heavy focus on standardized testing narrows education to test performance, sidelining critical thinking and creativity. The emphasis reinforces systemic inequalities by favoring students with more resources and support. These critiques highlight the challenges social workers and educators face in advancing truly equitable education.
Building on the challenges that we've discussed, it's clear that addressing educational inequities requires intentional, equity focused strategies. Culturally responsive education, which affirms and validates students' diverse identities, plays a critical role in increasing engagement and fostering belonging. Equally important is ensuring increased and equitable funding so resources are fairly allocated to schools and communities that have been historically underserved. Finally, expanding the presence of social workers in schools is vital to support students' holistic needs, addressing academic, emotional, social, and environmental factors that impact learning, and together these solutions move us closer to an educational system grounded in justice and equity. To create lasting change, we must focus on concrete policy reforms that address systemic inequities. First, increasing transparency and accountability in how schools receive and use funding ensures resources reach the communities that need them most. Next, mandating cultural competency training for all educators helps build understanding and responsiveness to diverse student needs. And finally, expanding social work and counseling services in schools supports students' mental health, and overall well being, which is critical to academic success. Together, these policy steps can help build a more equitable education system that truly serves every student. Critical race theory, or CRT, examines how racism is embedded within laws, policies, and institutions, including education. It reveals how educational structures often maintain racial inequities rather than dismantling them. Importantly, CRT challenges dominant narratives by centering the lived experiences and voices of marginalized communities through storytelling. It makes it a vital framework for analyzing and reforming educational policy and practice. For social workers, applying CRT means actively recognizing and addressing systemic racism to promote more equitable educational environments.
What concrete actions can social workers take to promote social equity by applying critical race theory? Social workers can advocate for anti-racist policies that dismantles systematic barriers within schools. They can also challenge deficit-based narratives that unfairly label and limit students' potential, shifting the focus towards strength and resilience. Finally, empowering students and families to advocate to ensure those most effective have a voice in shaping their educational experiences. This comprehensive approach targets the root causes of inequity and supports substantial justice oriented change. To conclude, education is an inalienable human right recognized globally, yet systemic barriers still prevent many from accessing equitable education, showing the urgent need for transformative change. Social workers have a vital role in advancing educational equity through advocacy, collaboration, cultural informed justice centered practices. By addressing these challenges together, we can help create educational systems that truly serve all students and uphold their fundamental rights.
Thank you for your time and commitment. Together, through informed advocacy, dedicated actions, we can ensure education fulfills its promises as a fundamental right for all. We invite any questions and comments you may have.